just a few weeks after no, maybe not a few weeks, maybe a month or two after the original release for Bowman Draft, we have the 1-of-1 Brady Superfractor Auto that sold this weekend through Golden Auctions for $158,000. There is a $500,000 bounty, which, whatever. I've said this in the past, like bounties it feels like it's very rare that the bounty actually goes through. Like I know DA Card World put out a bounty on some card. I forget which card it was exactly, but you know what it was? I think it was I don't actually now that I'm thinking about it off the top of my head, I forget exactly which card it was. I think it might have been it was the Babe Ruth Bowman Superfractor, I think. I'm pretty sure that's what the card was. That's actually one of the first times that I've seen a bounty go through. And the bounty's not on the 1-of-1. It was on the 12 of 50, which I think all of the cards that were in the set that were numbered 12, they're inscribed. So I don't know why the 12 of 50 maybe was the one that had the bounty on it. But like I said, I mean, at this point, if the 1-of-1 Superfractor sells for $158,000, I think it makes an interesting case for what the actual value of that other card is. Because I had talked about this when I first originally was seeing some of the campaign and some of the cards come out, and I was saying, like, does the fact that Brady inscribed all of the 12 of whichever numbered cards from that set, does it almost devalue those cards and then also the 1-of-1? Now, we don't know. There's no way to know one way or the other whether there was any type of value gained or lost from this type of thing, because, the market is the cards on the market are going to sell no matter what. We don't know whether those inscriptions hurt the value of this card. I still think a card selling for $158,000, one of the first ever Tom Brady Bowman autographs, I still think is a very big deal. And if you go on social media, I mean, honestly, at this point, it's really just a crapshoot of what you're going to see, if people are going to like it, if people aren't going to like it. I mean, I would say 9 times out of 10, the only reason you're going to see more people not liking something on social media is because that's just what gets the most engagement. That's what the people, that's what the crowd's asking for. When people like something on social media, you're just, it just kind of goes into a void, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like, at this point, specifically, too, I think in the market of sports cards and the people who are into cards in general, or who are on social media and like cards, I think that they love, if I'm going to be honest, to hate things within cards. And it's really such an odd, like, I was thinking about this the other day, it's such an odd, like, a conundrum, because it's like, you love this thing, but it's like it seems like you hate everything. It seems like everything is an issue, or there's always a problem, and it's like, that's why, I mean, I try to at least talk about positive stuff on the podcast sometimes. I mean, there is negative stuff that I'll talk about, but, like, I'm much more in the optimistic sense of it, I suppose. That's, in my opinion, I think I am. So I think, this Tom Brady card selling for $158,000 is great, because somebody pulled that card, they got it graded, and, all in all, they probably made, whatever, like $130, you pay taxes on that and stuff, but it's like, this was life-changing money for somebody. So someone got their life changed because they sold this card, most likely, especially if you're within sports cards, like 130, granted, like I said, with taxes, I don't know, you could cut that in half, so it's really probably like 70, 65, 70, 80 grand they probably made with all in all after taxes with this card. But it's like, that's life-changing money for somebody. So the fact that it's sold for that price, I still think is a big deal within sports cards. And there were a couple other cards that sold through Golden I'm going to talk about on probably tomorrow's episode. I'm going to talk about one of the other cards that sold that I thought was pretty significant. But, now that LeBron has been confirmed for Fanatics, the next big chase card is obviously going to be that 1-of-1 Bronny James LeBron auto coming out of Bowman. So this, maybe it's a conspiracy theory. I think it probably is, because you look at, like, what the big chase cards were over the past couple months, it was the Brady card that came out of this product. It gets pulled, it gets graded, it gets sold, and then Bowman Basketball is supposed to be coming out very soon, so then now you got the LeBron card that's going to be coming out. And I guess we'll see what the marketing campaign, I'm sure there's going to be a pretty heavy marketing campaign around that product, if I'm going to be honest, because, you know, a LeBron autograph, he doesn't just, he was exclusive with Upper Deck for so long, so he didn't have any Panini autos, so, his autos are very rare. So this is one of the first non-Upper Deck autos in, forever. And even, if you look at, he did the Space Jam product, I don't think any of those LeBron autos have been pulled out of the Space Jam product, at least not that I've seen. Granted, it was a hot product when that first came out, but, it probably, people move their interest to different ones, so they didn't, maybe they didn't care as much about that product. So if the card did get pulled and they get posted on social media, maybe people didn't notice it. There's a potential that happened. But like I said, you're going to see mixed reviews. Again, this is a thing where it's you can like this, you can like the fact that this card was pulled and not feel like, I don't know, weird about it or whatever, or that it's sold for this price. Because like I've said, I've seen a ton of people who are like, this is a great sale for this card. And I'm wondering when some of these inscription cards sell, I wonder what those prices are going to be and if they're going to compare to this, because like I said, I wonder if the fact that he signed the 12 of whatever cards and then this has this 1 of 1 sort of spreads out the value. I wonder, I think it'll be interesting to see those prices of those cards and then even potentially maybe doing some sort of, I don't know if there's an equation or anything really that you could pull from the pricing. Because sure, I think the 12 of 50 or whatever, even if it wasn't inscribed, it's probably going to sell for more than the 20 of 50 or the 2 of 50 or whatever. But the fact that they're inscribed, I think the value maybe it spreads out the value of what the overall pricing and overall total price of all these autos are going to cost. So I haven't seen any of the 12 autos pulled, only this 1 of 1. But like I said, it's sold over the weekend, and I'm going to have my eye out for some of these 12 autos that are signed or the inscripted, because like I said, I'm just interested to know if there's any type of devaluing or, valuing being spread out amongst these cards, because basically in this product, you have 4 or 5 cards that could be considered a 1 of 1. If you compare and contrast the way that Panini does marketing on Prism versus the way that Topps and Fanatics have done marketing on, the flagship product, Bowman, I think, is another good example. I would say if we're looking at, if we're comparing the two companies, those are probably the comparable products when it comes to popularity for each of the companies. And, Bowman, and I think this is actually probably one of the first years that Topps has really gone above and beyond. So, I would even say if you don't include the Tom Brady campaign in this year's promotion of Bowman, if you were just to include Bowman Chrome and then Bowman Baseball from the beginning of the year, and if you were to, I guess you could include all, probably Series 1 and Series 2, you're going to see more promotion from Topps versus Update, because when Update comes out, that's when also Bowman's coming out, and you've had a ton of different products, and it's actually interesting for me, Topps Update, I'm not sure exactly why there still is a Topps Update. I understand that Topps wants to make money on the product, and they're going to sell it, but I do wonder what the... I would be, and I'll never probably see these numbers, but I would be interested to know the profit margin between what it costs for all of the Topps Update cards, autographs, memorabilia, production, distribution, all of those things, versus how much money they actually make. Which, I guess now that I'm thinking about it a little bit, I would imagine Topps probably... They probably have contracts with distributors and hobby shops where they, and this is me, these sort of spitballing and brainstorming and not knowing for sure, but like the cards, it feels like when they come out, it feels like they're probably already sold. Like Topps isn't actively trying to get people, they're not actively trying to get the large quantities of Topps Update to be sold. They probably already have contracts in place with people where they know that Topps Update is a product that they can just produce, and they know that X amount of people are going to be buying it because they already have contracts in place. But either way, I think that there's a way that they could make Series 1 and Series 2 better, and just make it Series 1 and Series 2, or just maybe they call it something different. I don't know, because also, like, I don't know, it's just, like I said, it's weird that it's Series 1, Series 2, and then Update. Like, why not just do, I guess, the same way that Heritage does Heritage and then Heritage High Number? Why not just do two different products? Like, why not make the product a little bit better? And, I guess, sure, you might look at it and there may be a bunch of different reasons why they still want to come out with Update. But, sorry, that's not really the point. The point that I'm trying to make on this podcast is that I feel like Panini has given up on marketing Prism. And I say that across all of their sports, because if you go to their Twitter, there is one tweet about like a Puka Kanua, I think is the wide receiver, the rookie wide receiver from the Rams. There was one tweet about some like draft picks auto that someone bought, like that they retweeted like in the past couple days, because Prism basketball is close to coming out. I believe the checklist is out, which with Prism basketball and Prism football, there's only one release the whole entire year. So it really is almost a contrast between like Prism coming out once a year and then, Topps Update and Bowman coming out multiple times a year. But from what it looks like is that Panini has basically, and I think I've talked about this on other shows, where a couple different things. I don't know if Panini is looking at this and saying, well, we don't need to market because it's our most popular product. Like I said, chicken or the egg type situation. Do people want to buy this because we're marketing it, or do we not need to market it because people are going to be buying it no matter what? Like, and I don't think that's exactly the chicken or the egg. And I think actually on the last time I tried making that comparison, I think I did it wrong that time too. But either way, so that's like the one point. And then the other point is just like, do they maybe not even have the resources to market this product? Like, have they really gone almost skeleton crew at Panini with all the departments because of, I don't know. I mean, I just don't know what's going to happen with Panini over the next few years. Like, sure, they have some decent licenses, but I just feels like every couple months they lose a license. Maybe that's the reason why we're not really seeing any type of marketing around Prism. I think more realistically, I think that's probably the reason, because I just look at it and say, Prism is their most popular product, which, I mean, if you look at the marketing in general, there really hasn't been much promotion of any Panini product, which, I don't know if that's indicative of they know that the products that they're putting out are not good, realistically. Like, they know that they don't have any of these top quarterbacks on, any type of autographs. So it's like, if they're trying to promote any of these products that don't have autographs, it's like maybe they look at it and say, well, what's even the point? Like, we already know, like, and it's probably the same thing. Like, they already have, contracts with, let's just say, however many distribution companies, with ever many Targets and Walmarts. Well, Target and Walmart would be with the distribution, but hobby shops. So they don't, like, I would be also interested to know the difference between direct to consumer for Panini and then how much they're making through the distribution of, hobby shops and stuff along those lines. I think that also would be kind of an interesting number. And I wonder if it's like an 80-20 type of situation where 80% of the money they're making is from these, contracts and distribution, and then only 20% is direct to consumer. Because obviously with direct to consumer, you're taking out the middleman completely, but somebody, based on the pricing that they're putting out, and a lot of the products are saying that they're sold out, on Panini's website when they first come out with them, with like Verse Off the Line and stuff. But like, I don't know. I've worked in marketing before, and I have worked for a company that has tried to sell a product, and the product almost selling out was like a very specific marketing point that we use pretty frequently, if I'm going to be honest. Like, even though it really wasn't, sometimes it was close to selling out. Most of the time, it would be, most of the time it was a little bit of a fib. I'm not going to lie. Like, and that's just a marketing ploy. Like, marketing in general is such a, it's almost like you're trying to get, like, it's a scarcity type of marketing. And I think pretty much almost all marketing is really like that, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like, all different forms of marketing are trying to, I guess you could say, scare people into buying the product by saying that it's almost sold out. So, if First Off the Line comes out and that sells out really quickly, people that don't really know are going to look at that and they say, oh, well, now I have to, I want to go out and buy whatever at the store because, it's sold out on Panini's website. So if I can find it in the store, I got to buy it. Now, that type of consumer buying probably has a much lower threshold for the profit that Panini is actually making on the product because there's the distribution and then there's Target and there are Walmart. So there's almost different layers, which I think is sort of why we've seen Fanatics really do a lot of focusing on going more direct to consumer, because they're a business. They are a business trying to make money. So that's just, I think, what you're going to see from them in the future, more of that type of marketing. So that's why maybe Panini looks at it and says, well, if only 20% of our marketing only 20% of our profit from Prism is coming from people buying it directly, like what's even the point of marketing it on Twitter or Instagram or any of these websites? Like, maybe that's the case. I don't know. I mean, it does seem a little bit unfortunate because I always enjoy seeing all the stuff that people talk about Prism and all of these products when they come out. Panini, not really in the same boat, it seems, but I guess we'll see. Maybe there'll be some sort of more marketing once Prism Basketball actually is going to be coming out pretty soon. If you listen to this podcast on a daily basis, you've probably heard me preach about alternative sports until my voice goes hoarse. I think that's the saying. Whatever. But you have heard me talk about alternative sports ad nauseum. Soccer, I would consider an alternative sport. WNBA, another one I'd consider an alternative sport. MLS, I think you could also, I guess soccer, that falls under soccer. But so, I think maybe one of the most significant women's basketball cards is up for sale right now. It's going to be ending next week. And I'll mention on the podcast, I'm going to get my points out on this show because I think this card is very important. And it's the Caitlin Clark 1/1 Bowman Superfractor autograph. Unfortunately, it is a sticker auto. So that is a little bit, that I think is unfortunate. As of recording, it's at, I believe, $17K. $17K, like I said, with a week left. And the thing with Caitlin Clark is she's already a star. Like, she is doing what Steph Curry did in the NBA in the 2010s, where she is creating viral highlights. And this is something that I've talked about. I actually would almost say, I don't know, I don't think hockey is necessarily in that alternative sports category, but I think it's definitely outside of the top three. And I think between that and then number three, so baseball, basketball, football, I think are 1, 2, 3. I think there's a very wide margin between hockey and those other ones. But Connor McDavid, for example, he has highlights that go viral on social media. Caitlin Clark is doing the exact same thing. She is putting up video game numbers in the in women's basketball right now. I think you also look at LSU. There's also, I think her name is Christine Brink. She plays for Stanford, I believe. I think I talked about this. Now, I believe I talked about this on last week's podcast because I saw the checklist for this year for Bowman basketball. And the women that are on this checklist are, Paige Buchers is going to be getting her first Bowman in this upcoming Bowman basketball. But Caitlin Clark obviously was in last year's. And, we saw what happened with Caitlin Clark in the NCAA tournament, making it to the finals. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, LSU just kind of overpowered them a little bit when it came to the overall team. Like, Caitlin Clark was amazing, but the rest of the team really couldn't keep up with what LSU had to, like, what LSU brought out there. They kind of dominated that game if you watch that women's final. And again, I have preached about these, like, WNBA and women's basketball and I think soccer, because they're just, I don't know, there's just something about that I find interesting about sports and finding players that people don't really know about or interested in about, because I almost have found that there's some sort of camaraderie between people who are interested in these types of alternative cards and sports. And like I said, at this point, Caitlin Clark is not, she's a household name. If you follow college basketball at all, she's dominating. I mean, it's really impressive this year, honestly, what she's done. And I forget if this year is her last year or if she said she's going to play another year, because there was a thing with her eligibility because of COVID where she had an extra year. So I forget if this year is her extra year or if next year she can choose to come back again. And if that's the case, I wouldn't be surprised if she decides to go back to the NCAA and play another season. I think with some other names within college basketball, we've seen probably some more prominent, sponsorships. I mean, she works with State Farm, so I mean, so actually maybe what I just said is not necessarily correct. She works with State Farm, one of Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, some of the Travis Kelce, some of the biggest names in all sports, working with this sponsor. So I wouldn't be surprised to see her maybe potentially play another season in the NCAA. Now, it would be great if she went to the WNBA, because I think there are some this generation of WNBA players that are going to be going to the pros in the next year or two are really going to be it's going to be crazy. And you're going to see the growth of this sport really exponentially grow, because the talent that's going to be going into the league, there isn't just one or two players. There's like 5 to 10 players that are that are playing in women's NCAA right now that are going to be like the faces of the league. Like, we have already seen the faces of the league in the WNBA. The Lisa Leslies, the Sue Birds, and there's another one, Sabrina Ionescu, who's in the WNBA right now. She was a rookie in 2020. She was in 2020 Prism, which I still think is a phenomenal product to buy if you're really looking to maybe prospect on some sort of product. I think that's a good product to buy. I think last year's Bowman is another product that is going to be pretty significant in the next couple of years, because it also has the Wembanyama card in it. You're not going to get any autos, unfortunately, because they're redemptions. So that kind of maybe it probably hurts the product just a little bit. Not like a ton. I still think it's a good product to buy. But Caitlin Clark, like I said, is a player right now who is transcending the game of women's basketball. And there are a couple other players that, like I said, Paige Buchers, who hasn't had like these highlight plays, but like Caitlin Clark, who has been like dropping 30 every single game, like pulling up from the logo, hitting game winners. Like, it's really impressive what she's been able to do. And how I think that translates to cards is like, I just see more people being interested in this sport in the future. I don't see how when Caitlin Clark makes it to the WNBA, she isn't like one of the faces of the league and isn't like in every single marketing campaign and every single like piece of everything within the WNBA. So it's like, if you have the opportunity to buy that player's cards right now, like, we're not talking about if we're talking about Bowman, we're not talking about some random 16 or 17 or 18-year-old who has a first Bowman. We're talking about, like, you have an opportunity, if you want to buy a star. You're buying a star right now. And I guess that's my opinion, that's my prediction. But it's like, just based on what she's been able to do during the season this year, I don't see how she doesn't go on to be a superstar in the WNBA. And as the WNBA continues to become a larger league, there's just going to be more eyeballs and stuff. And I think what ends up happening is, I think one reason why women's sports has not been as popular is because it hasn't been on TV. And it's not because the product isn't as good. Like, if you watch these games, they're entertaining and they're good games. The leagues just haven't been able to get the contract secured. So the fact that they're going to be getting the contract secured getting these TV contracts, they're going to be able to push money into those leagues. They're going to be push money into the contracts and all of these things and get more exposure for these players. That's just, and in my opinion, that's what I think is going to happen over the next few years with women's sports overall. I mean, you could even say with like the women's soccer league, I think Parkside Cards, I believe, has the contract, like the exclusive contract for the women's MLS, basically. Which, again, that was a final that I watched that was very entertaining. It came down to like legitimately like the last kick of the game. So to add on to soccer and women's sports and all of these things, I think it's interesting to look into. Again, you'll probably hear me talk about this in the future. So, don't be surprised if Caitlin Clark goes on to become this superstar. And I don't even necessarily think that my prediction is going to be like, see, I told you everybody that she was going to be a superstar, because she is a superstar right now. It's like if Steph Curry was, like when he was at Davidson, imagine if Steph Curry was where he was at in his like 6th or 7th season in the NBA, but playing at Davidson and doing these insane things. That's what we're seeing right now with Caitlin Clark. And I think we're going to continue to see it. Now, what's going to happen with her cards? I think, at least I hope, we're going to see maybe some growth in maybe just women's sports overall. Like I said on yesterday's podcast, the market has changed a lot, but I think we're going to see people navigating towards some of these smaller, cheaper cards, or not smaller, but cards that are less expensive, because some of the more expensive cards are just out of people's price ranges. So they're going to look for alternatives, which is sort of what I've talked about with football. But I think with sports overall, with this sport overall, we're looking at like an even less expensive card that I think people are really going to be looking at in the next few years as a card where people really, I think people are going to enjoy the sport more because they're going to see it more because the product that's being put out is really good. Today's episode is going to be a little bit of a commentary on the quarterback market, I guess, right now. I mean, I do focus a little bit on the market, but not as much. I mean, I really do try to focus more on the big picture of where sports cards are going and just commentary on stuff that's going on throughout the news, because I don't know, I think at this point the market is, I don't know. It's just not, it's not as strong, and I think it's just, I don't know exactly what happened. Like, I think and we're actually, no, maybe it's not, okay, sorry, let me reverse that. It's not that it's not strong. I actually think that it's good because there isn't as much volatility, I think, within the market right now. And I think, not an example, but something that I want to make a commentary on is like, how sports cards, sometimes people within sports cards, not sports cards, but people within the community, people within buying and selling the market, they can just look at a player and just decide that that he's not a player that has value. Really, like, not even necessarily looking at like how well the player is playing. Because you look at a player, and I'll use three examples here. You got Jordan Love, you got Jalen Hurts, and then Baker Mayfield, who, if you go back way back when I was like first getting into podcasting, I remember making this episode about Baker Mayfield and being like, why Baker Mayfield might be one of the most interesting quarterbacks in the league if he can figure out how to change his career by potentially changing teams or something along these lines. But, Jalen Hurts lost like 6 of his last 7 going into the playoffs, which is insane. Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, who really has a better shot to make it? I really think probably the NFC Championship game is going to be the Lions in San Francisco. So I would say Jordan Love and Baker Mayfield, these are probably going to be their last games of the season. But I was just looking up pricing for both of their players, for their Prism rookie cards, because if you listen to my episode yesterday, I was talking about how Prism is basically, I would say that's basically the flagship. That's like the mainstay of cards for football and basketball players right now. And if you're looking at, the value of a player, I would say Prism is going to be that card you're probably going to be wanting to look at. Now, Jordan Love's cards right now are around $80, $90 for a PSA 10 of his 2020 Prism. Baker, on the other hand, his are going to be around $40 to $45. Now, I think Baker is probably going to get a big contract this offseason. So I don't know if, but I don't know if he's necessarily a buy now, whatever. I think you're probably going to be, I would say there's probably going to be a decrease in that price. Realistically, I don't know where it goes. I mean, maybe it goes to like 30. Maybe it stays around 45. But I think this offseason is going to be a big offseason for Baker because I think he's shown that he is actually a really good quarterback. Because, and now we're getting all the stories of Baker in Cleveland and how, like, the coach and the owner were fighting about him and how, I mean, realistically, if I'm the NFL, and this will obviously never happen, but they really should take a look at what the Browns are doing because the Browns overall have been one of the most pathetic franchises. And no offense to anybody who's a Browns fan, but like you look at all of the quarterbacks that have gone there, all the top picks that have gone there. They signed Deshaun Watson to this insane contract and totally messed up the quarterback market because they gave him all this guaranteed money, and now every other quarterback is going to look at that and say, "Well, Deshaun Watson got all that money, so I'm probably a much safer, reliable quarterback than he is. So where's the money that I'm going to be getting?" The NFL or someone needs to really take a look at the Browns and see what the heck is going on here. It also just shows that like sports just in general is like insanely profitable. Even you can run the most dysfunctional, worst team in the league, worst franchise in the league, and still, like, I'm sure whoever owns the Browns, if they were to sell the Browns today, they would probably make 10x their money from when they bought the Browns. But I think, like I said, and this is a Baker conversation, because then Baker goes to, I think, Carolina, and then he goes and he's the backup in LA, and then he goes to Tampa, and, he's got a pretty decent team around him, but I think he really showed this year that he is a really serviceable quarterback that can take a team to the playoffs if they're looking to. I don't know if he's necessarily going to stay in Tampa. I don't see... I don't know why maybe he wouldn't. I'm sure they're probably going to try and get him to stay, I would imagine. But overall, I just think you look at him as a player and his cards, the hobby really was so high on him when he first came into the league, and then they basically just were like, no, we're done with you. And I think that it goes to show that if you're buying any new quarterbacks, you never know what's going to happen. Like, you never know at what point you're just going to have a bad season and then the hobby's done with you. And then even if you have a good season, you upset, which I guess the Eagles, you look back at that game, people don't really know what they were doing there. I mean, that was kind of an odd game. The Eagles kind of stunk a little bit. But, like, that was an upset. I mean, I would say a lot of people thought that the Eagles were probably going to handle the Bucs probably pretty handily. Just based on the way that they played throughout the season. I know that they lost a bunch of games at the end of the season. And then Hurts, for example, is the other kind of quarterback that I was talking about here with Hurts and Jordan Love. People still really like them. And I think even Jordan Love, honestly, at like $80, like, I don't know. I guess I'll be interested in a few years to see sort of where, like, if there's a floor when it comes to cards, like when it comes to quarterback cards specifically too, within the NFL, because the quarterbacks at this point, I could probably keep making the prediction every single year that this is going to be the year that that running backs and wide receivers make some sort of resurgence within cards or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've been saying that for years and it hasn't happened. So I probably will keep saying it just because it's like the thing. It's almost like I'm going to keep saying it the way that everybody was saying sports cards are. There's fraudulent. It's a scam. It's going to go down. And eventually they were kind of correct, but they were saying it for years and years and years and years and years. And, there's the saying that, like, the broken clock is right twice a day. I don't necessarily, I guess that's what you could call the people that were calling for the downfall of sports cards or whatever for so long. And it's like, they can keep saying it, and eventually maybe they're going to be right. Maybe I'll keep saying that running backs and wide receivers are going to be more valuable, and maybe one day I'll be right. I don't know necessarily. Like, I'm not sure if I believe that necessarily anymore. I thought that they could. But now that we're seeing, like I said, the Jordan Loves, the Jalen Hurts, and then, Baker at the prices that they're at, and they're playing at the level that they're at, I'm not really sure where the floor is going to be or how much fluctuation there's going to be. And it may even be a thing where you're going to have to get really lucky in the future and guess right on certain players, because even if you do guess right on players, there's a chance that, they just may, the market or whatever, the market may just never pick up on that player. The market may just never necessarily really care. Baker, I think, is a perfect example. I mean, had really a phenomenal season. Plays, now is in the playoffs, is one game away from the NFC Championship game. I mean, he is, I think he's going into the Thunderdome. No, it's I was thinking the Ford Field. I was thinking of just another name for the stadium, because it's gonna be crazy. I mean, the fact that it was so cool to see all the Detroit stuff that happened this past weekend with them winning that game, especially against the Rams, and especially you see that because the trade that happened with Jared Goff and the Rams and all that kind of stuff was pretty cool. So, like I said, something that I was just thinking about, it's just Baker Mayfield, I think, is an interesting player, but have we reached potentially a floor within sports cards? And are we ever going to get to a point where we see that pretty high fluctuation in cards? I'm not really sure, to be honest, because I think the people who were causing the fluctuation in cards aren't necessarily into cards as much as they were in the past, which I think leads to more collectors being into cards, which I think in turn leads to prices staying pretty stagnant and not increasing and decreasing the crazy ways that we saw over the past few years. I guess Prism Football has been out, but we're finally getting some of the other products that have important cards, and I think the Kaboom card is definitely one of them. And I guess I could give Panini props maybe by saying the Kaboom, they have, I don't know how many of the non-numbered Kabooms there are. I would imagine that number has gone up significantly, but the gold and the green, they haven't added any more numbered Kabooms. So I think that, I don't know, I guess I can tip my hat to them, because if we're looking at some of the other things that they've done over the past few years, you probably could say, well, it wouldn't hurt them to add in a red number to 5 or something like that. I mean, basically go like the PMG route, because as much as PMG, I think, is one of the more important cards within sports cards in general, I think the way that the Kabooms are numbered is very similar, and the importance of those cards, I think, are very similar. Now, obviously, I don't think PMGs have any non-numbered PMGs. I think it's only red and green, which are numbered. So take that with what you will. But the other thing that I think is going to be interesting this year is how I will be interested to see how breakers promote the products for football, because they have none of those top rookie autographs. Sure, they have Anthony Richardson, who had a pretty promising season until, unfortunately, he got hurt kind of in the middle and then sort of didn't play the rest of the year. That was unfortunate. But I think, unfortunately, what that may lead to is people speculating on how good he could be, especially with, C.J. Stroud making the playoffs and playing at such a phenomenal level that it's I think people may try to equate Anthony Richardson's success early on in the season to a C.J. Stroud because he did play well, for the Colts, and the Colts weren't necessarily the best team in the league. They were kind of in that middle tier. I think that they were kind of close to making the playoffs. I'm pretty sure. I think actually it might have come down to that last game. I'm pretty sure with Houston, and I'm pretty sure Houston needed to win to get in, and I think that they did. So that's how they ended up getting in. So then with what you got this. What you have this playoff, you have a rookie quarterback who has been really phenomenal, but he doesn't have any. He's not going to have any autographs in any of these products. He's not going to have, which is crazy to say. And I almost wonder if Panini is really going to try and do some sort of something with trying to get autographs into some sort of product, because not having the Will Levis, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young autos in any product is pretty insane if you really think of the grand scheme of things, because it's really going to rely on the thing like these football products, like the marketing behind for breakers is really going to rely on a lot of like the parallels and the low numbered stuff. But that is the perfect example of what I was talking about with these kabooms, where they just continuously added new and new and new parallels. And now without those big autographs of those players, that's probably what we're going to see over these next like couple months as more football products come out. We're just going to see probably more parallels that are going to be, you know, the big hits that are going to be coming out of this product, because that's just what they're going to be, like, realistically. And that is, I think, unfortunate for football card people. Like, I mean, because you could buy, like, the Topps, like, Tyson Beck and Topps did a collaboration with CJ Stroud, which, like I said, I talked about this probably a couple weeks ago when the first original, like, I think CJ Stroud had like 450 yards and 4 touchdowns or something like that, and they came out with a Topps Now Tyson Beck version of that card. And the photo that they chose, and I think they did it for this one as well, the photo that they chose was, I think that they did a good job choosing the photo where you can't, like, obviously, if you know to look for the logos, you would be looking for them. And if you're like, I don't know, if you're a sports card person who's been looking at that type of stuff, you'll notice right away that there's no logos in any of the jerseys. But I think that they chose a good photo for that product to not negate the fact that there are no logos, but like make it seem like it's not as big of a deal as it could be. So, like, because the reason I'm talking about this now is because with Absolute coming out, that's kind of what I've been seeing on Twitter, is like all the kabooms that are coming out. And like I said, I think Kaboom it's Panini's it's one of their most important cards for football. Not as much for basketball, I don't think. I'm not really sure what I would compare for basketball. Panini is like the Kaboom, but like I said, the Kaboom is probably the biggest base non-RPA card for football. Just trying to think if there are any others. I mean, obviously all the low numbered parallels of the base cards, those are going to be also the hits, but at the same time, like, Panini has even done it where there's like 3 different versions of the 1/1, which I hate. I mean, I don't know if I've talked about that as much. Like, I think there was a Shador Sanders, there was like a multiple 1/1 image variation, 1/1 superfractors, and it's like, you're defeating the purpose of the 1/1s. Like, it really seems like it shouldn't be allowed somehow. Like, it seems like, I don't know. I like, it seems like they're just coming out with the same card. Like, that's the issue. That's the main issue that I have. Like, I know that there's like the regular Prism, and then there's like I think it's like the Mojo Prism, and then there's like another black variation Prism that is like, they're all 1/1s. And it's like, what is the, like, I obviously know what the point is. The point is for Panini to make more of those cards so that way they can spread them out throughout the product and make more product. But it's like, it's completely defeating the purpose of a 1/1. If you have 3 different 1/1s of the same card design, maybe one has a image variation, but there is the Mojo Refractor 1/1, and then there's the regular base 1/1. It does feel like that shouldn't be allowed, and I don't know from what, who would make it not allowed, like, because the sports card companies are the ones making the cards, so they're the ones that are making the rules. So there's no way for them to look at it and say, well, we don't want to put more than 1/1 in all of these products because we don't want to make more money or whatever. I don't know exactly what it is, but these low numbered parallels and some of these important base card some of these important insert base cards are going to be what drives these football markets. So I don't know. I'm really hoping that we see prices don't go crazy. Like, I don't think they're going to be that crazy this year for football because of the lack of autographs, but I do think that that's what you're going to see with a lot of marketing. So if like I said, don't be surprised if on social media and all this stuff, you see all the big polls or all of these inserts and the 1/1s and the low numbered parallels, because there's no autographs of any of those big quarterbacks in any football product this year.